Space Museum. I'm Mark Marquette. So glad that I'm back and you're with us to stay curious with one of our best guests out there, Nick Thomas. How you doing, Nick?
Good to see you, Mark.
Great to see you. Nick's going to talk about astronaut food today,
Yeah,
and we're looking forward to that. He's been the chief communicator for Delaware North out of Kennedy Space Center Visitors Complex, celebrating your 38th year this month,
this
you
month.
said.
Yeah.
And a lot of changes. You've seen a lot of incarnations operating that
Yeah,
wonderful
quite
space
a few
center out
changes.
there. And But what hasn't changed in all those years, Nick?
Well, I'll tell you what, the thing that hasn't changed over the years, over 38 years, has been what I'll call the pride of ownership of the employees. It's a very special place to work, and everyone who works there recognizes that. Uh, it's funny, some people call the campus, they call it the park. Well, I call it the campus.
Mm-hmm.
But it is far and above anything else that's going on in Central Florida as far as what the general public experiences, because they experience not only entertainment but education and also an insight into history.
Oh, yeah.
And for those who've been around for a while and have seen this history develop over the years, uh, they get perhaps a newer slant on the history and a better understanding of the history as it's occurred across the years. So we're very proud of the work that we've been privileged to do out there, continue to do, and look forward to continuing in the future.
Well, of course, you've done a fabulous job. He's been awarded the Snoopy Award. That is the uh, really one of the more cherished things out there in the industry for your commitment and things you've done. And he's also the Harry Colcom News and Communication Awards winner in 2017. And those of you know that I won the award this year, and I was teasing Nick. I hope you don't want to give yours back.
No, not at all.
But
Congratulations and
uh,
welcome to the very august body of the Harry Colcom Award.
Thank you. I wish I could have known him. I had Carlton Bailey on
Mhm.
to talk about Harry because for me, this is an award for the museum, but in a way, a lifetime award for my astronomy outreach for 50
Mhm.
years and all that. But you certainly must have known Harry Colcom, or did you?
No, I did not. I did know the first award recipient, and that was Jack King, the voice
Yes.
of Apollo during Kennedy Space Center during the Apollo program, and also one of the other award winners, and his name just slipped my mind. But we're in very distinguished company. We're very privileged to
Oh,
be in the company of the Colcom Award.
yeah,
It's
the communicators, Tariq Malik of
mhm.
space.com has won that, and Robert Perlman does a great job with
Right,
Collect
right.
Space. I got a text from John Zarella. Welcome to the
Uh-huh.
club with
Uh-huh.
John. Of course, John wins everything, you know.
Yeah.
If you live long enough, John, you're going to
And
win these
there's
awards.
and there's also our old friend Hugh Harris.
Yes, Mr.
Yeah.
Hugh Harris was there. I think I'm the 24th recipient. It's been
Very
out
good.
there that long.
Mhm.
And yeah, God bless. Thanks for bringing up Hugh. I talk about him a lot, and really privileged that he sat in this
Yeah.
chair for about a dozen programs, the
Hmm.
voice of NASA.
Yeah.
So, enough of that stuff there. I appreciate all the heartwarm thoughts of everybody. Last week was quite a week for me. Nick, President Nixon on the Hornet said to the
Mhm.
astronauts that this is maybe the greatest week in all human
The
history.
history of the creation.
And I think I had one of the greatest weeks I've ever had in my life,
Hmm.
being named the director of the museum, getting
Yeah.
the Colcom Award, having a heart event, and then having a birthday. So you can't make this stuff up. The heart event, I think, was my big guy up there just saying, Mark, just cool your jets there.
Ease up.
You just don't get too big ahead.
Just ease off.
And but thank you all for up there. I see a lot of people saying hi, including my daughter. Hello, Jessica, and my granddaughter McKinley. Hi, McKinley. She turned 3 last month, and little 1 year old Macy. I'll be seeing them over Thanksgiving up in Bristol, Tennessee. They weren't hard hit, but that whole
Hmm.
area, oh my
Oh yeah,
gosh,
sure. Yeah.
Southwest Virginia and over there in the Asheville area. Sadly, I think there's still people buried in mud from the terrible landslides and weather they
We
had
were
there.
lucky where I live in Titusville. We had one night of heavy rain and then the next morning of heavy wind, but never lost our power. The hurricane had taken about a 20-degree turn to the north when it made landfall, and that spun it away from us, but unfortunately took it to, among other places, Holly Hill, where my brother David got flooded out.
Oh
So
my.
it's not been without consequences.
Well, you're the astronaut wrangler out there, and of course, our good friend museum, Nicole Stott, and her
Yep.
husband Chris, they
Hmm.
had 8 feet of water in their
Oh
home
boy, yeah.
over in the St. Pete area,
Oh gosh.
and they got about a foot with
Mhm.
Helene, and then Milton cleaned them up there. And thank you, Nikki, for your warm thoughts for me here at the museum. And of course, it's bittersweet because I've become the director following the passing away of our director, Karen Conklin.
Great lady.
But we're going to keep things going full head of steam and got a lot of things going on, particularly in STEAM education there. Talked to Anna Fisher
Hmm.
yesterday out there at the Space Center, one of the original 6 women
Yep.
astronauts. Just she really enjoys being there and meeting the public,
We
doesn't
have such a
she?
good time when Anna's out there, and she does. She has that wonderful connection with the public. She has an especially warm connection with the young people, with the kids.
Uh-huh.
Very inspirational for them. And she showed me a book that was written about her, children's book that was written about her, that she had no knowledge of until somebody sent it to her.
Wow.
And it's Anna Fisher, astronaut and supermom.
Oh, really?
So
Really? It's about her, just
it's
some little
a
segment
it's
about
a
it. Interesting.
children's book about Anna's life
Huh.
story and her arc, her trajectory over the years, and it was very wonderfully done. I
For
should have
those, yes.
thought to bring that in with me.
For those of you local, this was the last day to see her, but one of my favorite guys, he is just in such great shape for his age, Terry Wilcutt.
Terrible Terry Wilcutt. Yeah,
You know when he was
absolutely.
born?
He just celebrated a birthday, didn't he?
Halloween.
Oh
He's a
man, okay.
Halloween baby. And I texted Mike Baker.
Hmm.
I said, next time I see you, you have to tell me the ribbon he took for being a Halloween baby, because these astronauts, they find out something,
Oh
they
yeah,
don't let up.
yeah.
It's yeah, they love to joke on each other here. So I look forward to trying to see Terry out here this week. He's out there till the 8th. And then Guy Gardner, and guys in
Hmm.
the flow quite a bit
He's
out
great.
there. Rick Heeb,
Yep,
he comes a couple times a year.
yep. Hmm.
Had his hands on that Intelsat with
Yeah,
2 other
yeah, yeah.
astronauts, the only 3-person EVA. And then Mark Lee will be out there, and Charlie Walker. So
Just a heads up for you, we just got this word a couple of days ago. Mark is not able to join us this time, and he's going to be replaced on the schedule by Ken Cameron.
oh,
Yeah,
okay,
just
got a
a,
good Buckeye there,
yep.
Ken Cameron.
Hmm.
So, but that's one of the things I like that I hope never goes away at the Space Center is having an astronaut every day that you can hear a talk from and go up and get a free photograph and an autograph. It's so important, I think.
I like to say during the chat with, there's not another place in the world that does what we do in that room, which is to say you can come there twice a day, 7 days a week, sit down and speak with a veteran astronaut and ask that astronaut any question on your mind, anything from launch to landing to crew selection, training, how's the food
Hmm.
up there, anything on your mind. So we're very proud of our place in space education history, let's put it, to be able to offer that to the general public and people all over the world who come to see it.
And no, they don't do it at Johnson Space Center.
They do a modified version, I think, once or twice a week,
Hmm.
but uh, to paraphrase John Wayne, it don't hold a patch to what we do at KSC.
No, it doesn't. And Nick is always out there introducing him with the whole team out there. And it's just fabulous out there. Let's see who we've got. John Graham is running the board today, and Marty Winkle is in the background. Hey, Marty, we miss you here at the museum, but he's up in which town in New York? Did he tell me?
He didn't tell us.
Okay.
And I'm talking with him right now. Marty, you got to tell us where you are
Uh,
in New York.
but he's taking care of some family business up there, and he's got. We're going to see some pictures of the flora, fauna up there in a minute,
Mm.
and some interesting creatures that are habitating his area. But we want to say hi to Dave Stange and his granddaughter Mia. Hi, little Mia. She turned 2 and she sang "Happy Birthday" to me in a
Outstanding.
text that Dave Stange sent me. He's licking his wounds up there. He's a Michigan Wolverine,
Okay.
and his football team didn't do
Didn't
too
do that
good. They
well.
ran into a buzzsaw with Oregon, that's for sure. But I got my red Buckeye stuff on here, though it's my
Okay.
brand new birthday Space Force shirt there.
Very good.
You got your Apollo 14
Apollo
on there
14,
with
yeah.
one of our favorite astronauts, Alan Shepard,
Mhm.
who I guess you probably met Mitchell too, but I don't know if you met Rosa.
I was privileged to be a friend to Ed Mitchell. I met Stu Russo when a friend of my father's had arranged for me to get a gold badge tour just after Apollo 14. And when we went to the flight crew training building, Stu was there to take us through the CM and the LEM simulator. So I did meet Stu that one day. But Ed, I've known over the years. I even tagged up with Ed when I was living up in New York when his society or his organization, Noetic Sciences,
Yep, Noetic Sciences.
they were sponsoring a Broadway presentation.
Oh,
So I was invited
really?
to that and to the cast party and so
Oh, we'll
forth.
have to talk about that
Yeah.
later.
And all the actors, they didn't want to talk to anybody but the astronaut.
Yeah, his Noetic Institute is paranormal activities. He did try to perform an ESP experiment on the moon. But you can see I'm excited to have Nick here. We digress a lot, talking about space history, what limited knowledge I know compared to what this giant of the industry knows is just fascinating. And we've got things in the works, plans, Nick, to maybe get you and a couple VIPs of NASA on a podium and just take questions, that sort of thing. And Nick's going to be our master of ceremonies at our Shuttle Fest 4 that some of you have already signed up for. And though I've not broadcasted formally, I let you know that we're going to have Eileen Collins.
Yeah.
Can't get much A list than that, can you, sir?
Doesn't get much taller than that.
Yeah, or humbler or wonderful
Yeah,
personality.
Absolutely.
We're going to look forward to that.
Yeah, she's one of the people I've said before. She's one of those people who come along at the right time, the right place in history, akin to Charles Lindbergh, Neil Armstrong, and so forth. Eileen is definitely in that constellation of stars, and she was just the right person at the right time to not only be the first woman to command a shuttle mission, but also to command the return to flight after the loss
Absolutely,
of
return to
STS-107.
flight.
Yeah, remarkable woman.
And the first rendezvous at the Mir space station was no small deal.
Well,
they didn't dock, but they were wondering about how they could get close to it. and
Let's not forget about that hydrogen leak on her launch when she was carrying the Chandra X-ray observatory. That was
that
walk
was-
in the park.
Yeah, yes, that's right. My friend Dean Schaff was the ground operations manager for the transoceanic
Oh, yeah.
abort landing site.
But his console was
And
busy
they
that
didn't
day.
they didn't want to catch that up there okay in there. So so we got a lot of good stuff going on here. So stay tuned, and we're getting our numbers up there thanks to John Graham here. He and his wife Samantha, she has been on the show Space Coast Sam. They know what they're doing to maximize getting some more viewers out there. Like Robert Law up in Dundee, Scotland. Hope you're enjoying your evening up there. Doug Forrest is in Los Angeles. Gary Gerald's in Collins, Georgia up there. And they've all, thank you for your well wishes. Got John Borelli's up there in New York. He says, good to see Nick and Mark here. Mitch Rothman of Manned Space. Now, Mitch, I don't think you're much of a Facebooker, are you?
No.
But Mitch has a wonderful Facebook site that it ends at ASTP. He wants the legacy stuff talked about, and,
Right.
and he's done a good job. Tom Celentano and Dean Babcock, thank you guys. Mitch says he met Jack King many times at Astronaut Scholarship Foundation events there.
Great guy.
And Bill Whiting, who you know, Bill, we miss Bill.
Yep.
You miss that big guy coming up there with his Canadian stuff
absolutely.
and everything. He's doing a family thing up there in Michigan himself. And thank you again to my daughter for all your birthday wishes and stuff. And Tommy Usiak,
Hey.
he says hello to me and hello to you. Couldn't do this before. See what John's done for us there? We can see
You got the live feed going on there. Good.
on there. So a lot of technical things are going to improve. And if you're wondering what is behind me, there is Sonny. Sonny's behind me fixing dinner. at the International Space Station probably 13 years ago, her last trip up there.
Yeah.
I know it was 13 or 14 years ago.
This is inside Node 1. This is one of the two communal dining areas that are on board the International Space Station, the other one being in the Russian base block. And just as a bit of trivia, we talk about keeping a clean house up in microgravity. Out of the view of the camera in this picture is a fabric overhead. It's like parachute fabric, and the camera was panning around Node 1 one day, and it happened to pan up onto this overhead, and there were splotches of ketchup and mustard and this food and that food. That's where a lot of the food can go because you're talking about 3 dimensions.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just another one of the challenges of eating in space, and we'll get to that shortly.
Well, there's Steve Jokums at Lake County Spaceport up in beautiful shores of Lake Michigan up there. And thank you, sir. And both and I enjoyed Formula One racing. That was a hell of a race in the wet at Interlagos, man, in Brazil. That was something else on there. And Steve had that question for you. I didn't know if you had time to review that.
Let's see, I think that was a question about
when Story Musgrave.
Yeah, an
was
appearance by Story Musgrave back when we were doing the astronaut encounter outside in the open, and well, actually under an overhang. But I came on board to the astronaut encounter office just before we moved indoors to the Universe Theater. Story was a regular member with us even back when we were doing it outside. He was with us several times, but as to any particular dates when Story was there, my personal records don't go back that far.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, we'll try to find that for you. Who did I hear that story about Story from? That he was introduced to come up on the outside stage, and he was in the audience dressed in white, not the blues, and he went up to the stage and the security tackled him.
No, I hadn't heard about that.
Oh, yeah.
No.
We'll ask Story. We'll get him to come to Stay Curious. Shuttle Fest. He lives around here, of course, you know that.
The only remarkable entrance on the at the outside stage that I can recall was when I was working with Walt Cunningham, and Walt. The walkway from the back of the stage area to the stage was probably a distance of some 15 or so feet. And I'd introduce Walt, and he would run down the center aisle, and he would jump up onto that stage, which was quite high off the ground, because he was a gymnast, so he knew about those things. And he invited me one day. You want to try that one day? I said, "There's no way in the world I'm going to try to do that. No, thank you."
I've seen Guy Gardner do that
in
an introduction.
Yeah.
He takes those steps a couple at a time.
Oh, well, he can do it. He's got them legs to do it.
Yeah, Guy. Can't wait to see Guy again. Get him involved here in our museum. Steve says, when I met him at the encounter, he was dressed like any other tourist in the crowd.
Mm-hmm.
You mean Story or Walt? You probably meant Story, but yeah, he's something else. It's very vibrant health, running 6 miles on the beach every morning, I understand, or some distance at age 82 or 3.
Yeah, he's got a condo in Merritt Island. I don't know if he still has
Cape
place,
Canaveral.
I don't know if he still has the place in Kissimmee. Where
He does not.
He does not. Oh,
yeah,
okay.
he was the world's expert, Story Musgrave, in palm trees.
Landscaping. He's
Landscaping.
Had
a big business,
trees.
yeah. And of course, at one time he flew the T-38 more than anybody, and wrote a book about that.
Right. Yeah.
In there. No, we gotta. He just needs to come by and say hi to you someday.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I know someone that lives. In fact, one of our docents, Barry Smith, a Goddard guy. He lives in the same condo with him there. So. Well, let's kick off our show here. Enough kibitzing around here, but that's when we can do it with somebody that knows what he's talking about more than me. I'm going to do it. So here's what we're going to talk about today. You got the image up there? There you go, John. Space food. And before we get wound up with that, there's a beautiful fall foliage from Marty's neck of the woods. He's in Calverton, New York. The fall has been spectacular everywhere in the Smokies and Blue Ridge, my friends say.
It's gorgeous.
Up there. And Marty, we miss you. The whole staff misses you here. Don't worry. John's not going to he'll give you your seat back there. But no, we're trying to divest some of my duties and Marty's and let not a new crew take over,
Just
but
keeping it warm for you, Marty.
keeping it warm for you, John.
There was a
says
beautiful meme about fall in Florida, the wonders of fall in Florida, and it was a picture of a palm frond laying on the sidewalk.
Oh, yeah, that's good. That's good. Look like some turkeys. He's in the wilderness up there, Nick, with some
Look at that.
some beautiful deer there. That's some good eating there, I'll tell you right now.
Wow.
And one of these deer mooned Marty. Okay, it turned around and just flat out mooned him up there. So we miss you, my big brother. But know you're doing a good thing up there, and I would like to see a little break in the action here myself. Thank God I can open up my window at night a little bit and let it come in there. But Marty, we're not getting away from the fact that you have a space trivia question of the day, and you know Marty's a typical engineer. Nick, he was very introvert about this show. I'm never going to be on the talk on live on there. In fact, Marty, you know the joke about I did meet an extrovert engineer at the Colcom Award.
Yeah.
He was staring at my shoes.
Okay.
All right.
Well, I'll tell you, I was privileged to be at the last gathering of the Grumman guys from the Apollo program with Marty, and you talk about a number of folks who they're not loquacious.
No.
But when they speak, you can hang your hat on anything they say.
That's right.
Yeah.
Because they're not like us on there. So I'm going to try to show the full thing here. But we're going to start where we're at there. But the question for Marty that we'll answer at the end of the program is, let me make that big. No. Oh, wait. Yeah, I make it like that. And then I put it up there. There we go. Sputnik was launched October 4th, 1957. What sitcom premiered that night on U.S. television? The night of Sputnik, when the world was like hearing the beep, beep, beep. And nobody saw Sputnik. They saw the booster stage attached to Sputnik. It never separated from the booster. But what TV sitcom that become very famous, and you can probably see it tonight on any rerun nostalgia channel,
Now,
premiered on that night.
Are we going to offer a prize for anyone who comes in with first correct guess?
In the future, we will, as long as it's not Nick or Steve Jokums. He's become the Ken Jennings of Jeopardy of this.
It'll be dinner at McDonald's with Marty.
Yeah, dinner at McDonald's with Marty. Exactly.
Marty and the milkshake.
But we're gonna find out a way to do that and send you guys something. We certainly got enough space swag to get rid of. So let's see here. We got John Borelli's up there. He'd like to personally thank Nick for the multiple astronaut encounters I've been to. He's always there. And I call him by name. Outstanding person. Thank you, Nick. And I'll see you again shortly. And John's kind of short. He's got some nice long blonde hair and not long dark hair. And he comes several times a year. He's a New York guy. Carlton said that who inherited David Letterman's stalker after she left New York? She was caught showering in Story's backyard.
Yep.
Is that right?
Yep.
And Calverton's on Long Island. I wanted to say that, but I didn't want Marty correcting me right away, so Mitch did. And Mitch has got a guess there, and Steve Jokums thinks that's correct. Okay. So we'll see at the end of the show, guys. Keep guessing. What sitcom premiered the night Sputnik was beep, beep, beeping over us? Thank God it didn't have a nuclear warhead on it, because that's what they wanted to show us, was they had a big-ass booster that could they could put anything anywhere around the world.
The word back in those days was throw weight.
Yes, throw weight. And there's Cynthia Rossi. Good to see you, and too, you know Cynthia. Out there all the time. So throw weight was the common term, huh?
Yeah, and it was a matter of who could put the largest payload and who could support that payload up to orbit. And as we found out later on, the Soviets were not the titans that we thought they were as far as production of rockets and so forth were concerned. There's a very good book that was recommended to me by Fred Gregory. It's available on Kindle. It's called The Wrong Stuff. And it's about the Soviet space program and some of the fallacies that we were under, or the misconceptions that we were under about the Soviets' capability, and a lot of those misconceptions were fostered by politicians.
Mm-hmm.
So, a very interesting read. If you get a chance to read it,
I
it's
will
called
do
The
that.
Wrong Stuff, and it's a grand insight into the Soviet space program.
Well, Premier Nikita Khrushchev used the program as his own personal propaganda,
Sure. Yeah.
and we've talked about that. He was actually denounced during the three-person flight of Voskhod 1.
Mhm.
Those guys had to be just a nervous wreck in that
Oh
little tin
gosh, that was
can,
terrible.
without spacesuits and all
Yeah.
that stuff. So, Steve Jokum says Sputniks and Mutniks flying through the air. That's right. What I find incredible, that was fact, the second launch to orbit to Earth had Laika the dog in it, and that was a heavy payload there.
Yeah.
Successful launch, let's put it that way.
Now there was also a story about Leica in the Wrong Stuff, and trying to remember the particulars of it, but it's been generally thought throughout the world that Leica expired because of the running out of oxygen up on orbit. But Leica died shortly before the spacecraft got into orbit, and I'm trying to remember what the cause was, but it was
Heat exhaustion, I'd heard too.
yes, that's exactly what
may
it
have been
was.
dead when they launched
The
her.
temperature
Yeah.
inside the capsule, and it was not a pleasant way to go.
No, it was inhumane, and but that was the only. And there's a lot of inhumane things done in our program to primates, but that's the only way we could assure that humans weren't going to be lost. So, as if I thought Nick and I wouldn't have much to talk about, I threw this little slide I put together. That Nick, we've got. Let me go. Got the three Chinese tachionauts of Shenzhou 18 landed earlier today. So we've got 10 humans orbiting Earth. I just left this together. And of course, Butch and Sonny. Doesn't it just aggravate you that people think they're stranded?
Well, it's a common misconception that again is advanced by folks who want to get clicks and want to get eyeballs on news shows.
Yeah.
It's a sensationalism, and that's been a long running theme through the world of journalism. You really just got to sit down and talk to the people who are involved in the thing to realize that yeah, we had a problem. It was not unanticipated. There were discussions on what to do about it. And a lot of people complain about the fact that, well, it took so long for them to finally decide that we're going to send this thing back unmanned. We keep Sonny and Butch up there. But that is simply a reflection of the fact that NASA took the time to gather all points of view on this problem. Now, you will remember that after 51L and after STS-107, the complaint was that voices weren't being heard. Well, by God, voices were heard this time.
Good
And
point,
it was
Nick.
a good, healthy engineering debate on this matter. We realized it wasn't an Apollo 13 situation by any stretch of the imagination. So the folks on the ground had time to discuss this inside and out and come to the right decision. And again, I think it's a glowing reflection on the strategy that NASA has to take these problems out, hear all the voices, and make the right decision. So, well done.
Yeah, they were in a very safe place, still are. And it's probably this expedition 72, 24 years
wow.
of continuous
That's something.
occupancy.
Yeah.
Sonny's very experienced up there, 300 days before she went up. Butch over 150 some days. She's the commander.
Yep.
And I say they'll probably, not break some records with the science being churned out up there with this team up there.
Yeah.
And what I find interesting is Nick Hague and the Russian Guba, I can't bring his name, but the Russian that went up on MS-27 and 26 in the middle there with Don Pettit, who's
Right.
quite a character. They survived an abort Soviet launch to suborbital, and they put them back up again a year later. So these guys are enjoying again some time together after surviving a near-death experience of an abort to orbit.
And another unfortunate,
they didn't go to orbit, abort suborbital. Abort.
They didn't. An abort is nothing that you cherish, but it certainly is a demonstration of the fact that your engineering is solid, your plan is good.
Yeah.
And that you're going to be taking care of your crew, and they can come back from that and fly again. So again, a good validation of that Russian system.
So we wish the Chinese well. Though they're our adversaries, you got to give it to them. This is only their 14th human flight in their history,
Right.
and like the fifth occupation of this Tiangong space station. And I'm afraid, Nick, we're gonna, if Artemis makes it to the moon, they're gonna be some chopsticks waiting for him there or something.
Personally, I don't think so.
Don't you?
No.
I hope
no.
not, but we'll see.
And if we want to talk historically, there's only one First Nation to have landed on the moon. The
Yeah.
next record is going to be who's the first nation to return, and we're going to get that too.
Well, good.
I'm
I
not
hope we do.
concerned.
622 humans have orbited the Earth, and 80 of them
Yeah.
are women.
Yeah.
And you said you and Anna were talking about that.
Yeah, talking about the overall numbers, how many people have flown, how many people overall internationally have flown, and how many women and how many Americans have flown. And the numbers are just so impressive now that these are numbers we certainly never anticipated back when we started the program back in the 60s and so forth. But it's just another indication of how the program has matured. We're seeing the start of a new golden age in space flight, both manned and unmanned, and that is the involvement of private corporations such as SpaceX, Blue Origin, and so forth. We are seeing civilian space flight. It ain't cheap, but it's happening. And basically, as far as human spaceflight is concerned, I think we are where aviation was back in the 1920s, when it turned from a solely government operation into the private sector. So we've seen basically Earth orbit being turned over to private enterprise, and that's a good thing.
Yeah, very good thing.
Yeah.
And that promotes innovation, promotes all kinds of things.
And gives
going
NASA
on.
the opportunity to go back to outward bound exploration.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go. And so, we'll see it there, how it plays out. But, when you get a bunch of astronauts up there, we've got 10 humans orbiting Earth. And the one thing that happens to them, that happens to all of us, is they get hungry. And so we're going to turn it over to Nick with a program he's put together here and open that up by saying, here is our little space food exhibit that we have next to our Space Workers Gallery. And we've got some interesting things in there. I won't go through them all. We do talk about the corned beef sandwich that was smuggled on... that was a 30-second event on GT3.
Yeah.
That John Young offered his Commander Gus a bite of a Wolfie's corned beef
Wolfie's
sandwich,
delicatessen.
and that precipitated Robert Mueller going before Congress, trying to justify what the heck these guys doing.
Well, there were some people on the Hill who said that NASA had lost control of their astronauts and all this was going on, and the whole thing, as I'd mentioned on an earlier podcast, was that it was Wally's idea, and Wally gave John Young the sandwich to take up there. Now, after the mini firestorm came up from Capitol Hill, there were some astronauts in the office who were not too happy with Wally because he thought that he had kind of put the program in not the best light, just for a gotcha.
Yeah,
And it was just heat that you didn't need.
yeah.
But frankly, personally, I'm glad he did it, and I know John was glad he did it, and Gus got a kick out of it too.
Yeah, and it was a 30-second event, wasn't it? Just hey, what do you got there? I got a
corned
sandwich
beef
from
sandwich.
Wolfie's,
Doesn't have
Take a
mustard
bite
on
of
it,
it.
huh? Oh, okay. Well,
Yeah, I ain't gonna eat it without mustard
Yeah.
on it there. And we've got one of the cooler things I think we have in our museum is this water dispenser,
rehydration station.
rehydration station from
Yeah.
the shuttle era there.
Mhm.
When I hit full, it takes the picture away,
There we go.
John. Just
Yeah.
FYI on that,
I'm
but that's
noticing that.
okay.
Yeah.
Would you see if that plug, if that turn that on?
There.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah.
Now we got my
we go.
gray hair shimmering there on there. But all right, that's enough for me. Nick, you take it away, my friend, and tell me when you want to advance the images here.
I think the top three questions that we get at Chat with an Astronaut and Astronaut Encounter, certainly one of the top three is, what's the food like up there?
There's yours.
And it's strange, but we during Project Mercury, you see some examples of food from Project Mercury here. What garnered a lot of attention was the fact that some of this food was in those toothpaste tubes. And I had a chance to talk to Gordon Cooper about that back in 1972. And I asked him about the food and what they had up there. And he said one of the items they had in the toothpaste tubes was pureed beef. I said, well, how did it taste? He said, you remember kennel ration? I said, well, yeah, the dog food, yes, smelled all the way around the block. He said, that's what it smelled like and that's what it tasted like. So the food was not too great, but that enduring picture of food in toothpaste tubes still exists to this day. People still ask if we're still eating food from toothpaste tubes up there, and we're not. But this is an overview of some of the early Mercury food that also passed into Gemini, where you have a lot of bite-sized foods and bacon squares. Bacon makes everything good. And some of the very rudimentary foods that we first started to work with. Of course, John Glenn ate applesauce up in orbit, and then we graduated to the larger menu for Gordon Cooper's flight on Phase 7 because he was going to be up there for over a day. But this is basically the genesis of food in space. This is where it started. This is one of those toothpaste tubes, and I can't read the label from here.
What does it say, John?
Beef and vegetables.
Oh,
Beef and vegetables.
charming! I'll bet that was a lot of fun to open up.
And this is a 1960s toothpaste tube.
Yeah.
It's like partially metal.
Yeah.
Isn't it,
Oh,
in
yeah,
there?
yeah, yeah. And
Or light lead, I think it
we'll
would
see.
be back in the day.
We'll see an advancement in this technology when we get to the shuttle program. Here's a selection of food taken up during Gemini 3. You're seeing the water gun that they're being used to reconstitute beef pot roast. And then you've got the orange drink next to it. And then again, some bite-sized cubes and even a wet nap. So Gemini was where one particular food item made a very large impact on the public consciousness. And I think we have that next. And that was Tang.
Oh, yeah.
Now, people ask, do we still have Tang up there? Well, we have fruit juices. I don't think we're still taking Tang because it's just too acidic. And I'm sorry, General Foods, but there it is.
Yeah, I ran out of Tang, or I'd be drinking Tang. I got to go to the store and get some Tang.
But what happened here is very important during the Gemini program because they did, in fact, choose Tang to go up on the Gemini program. And General Foods, naturally, they wanted to publicize the fact they're involved. And you started seeing these print ads. You saw the television commercials and so forth. Tang, the drink of the astronauts. And it really, I won't say it got out of hand, but it got to the saturation point where NASA was not too terribly happy about it. So thereafter, NASA told any commercial contractor that they dealt with that had products up in space, such as food, drink, clothing, and so forth, okay, we'll write you a contract, we'll use your product up there, but you cannot benefit from that fact commercially. You can't put on the magazine ads, we supply the clothes for the astronauts. So that restriction came into play. You'll see in some of the further slides that foods have been food labels have been blocked or written over or eliminated altogether. But now
a great example is chocolate covered
candy coated peanuts and chocolate coated candy coated chocolates.
Yeah, which is M&Ms.
Which are M&Ms. But it's gotten to the point now where who was it? One of the guys on Space Station, he made a peanut butter and jelly sandwich with a tortilla up on space, Shane Kimbrough. And he made this PBJ tortilla up there. And he was very clearly scooping that peanut butter out of a Jif jar. So as long as the company does not promote that fact in their commercials and print ads and so forth, it's okay.
Tell us why they're using tortillas instead of
Well, tortillas,
bread.
of course, are much better than bread because, number one, bread crumbles. You've got crumbs all over the place. You don't want to aspirate or ingest breadcrumbs that are floating around the cabin. You don't want them floating into the equipment and causing havoc there. So tortillas, from that standpoint, are pretty stable, and they also last longer. Bread is going to stale very quickly, whereas tortilla is going to last a lot longer, and you can carry a whole stack of them like that and not worry about them going stale.
Yeah, I like the picture where they've got paper clips holding the
Oh
tortillas
yeah,
up.
taco.
And
Ken Cockrell was doing
yeah,
the breakfast
yeah, breakfast
tortillas.
for everybody on there with.
Wendy Lawrence told me that the chicken fajita, you take the chicken out of the MRE and you wrap it up you make a burrito out of it. And she said that was very good.
Huh. Well, we're enjoying this conversation with Mr. Nick Thomas. Of course, he, as we lovingly call him, the astronaut wrangler out at Kennedy Space Center, and he's dealt with the whole program of astronauts and the public for over 38 years. We're looking at there. So, and I think Nick, you're kind of like me. You're going to be the Energizer Bunny and keep on ticking till you can't tick anymore.
We were talking about that with Anna Fisher a couple of days ago. And Anna asked, you ever give any thoughts to retirement? I said, Anna, I'm probably going to be like John Young. They're going to have to break my thumbs on the door jamb to get me out of there. So,
in there.
we'll see. As long as I'm feeling good, and
Yeah,
I'm enjoying it, and
but-
I'm making a contribution, why not?
I certainly feel it helps me mentally, and I just I'm amazed at what I know, folks. Sometimes that comes out of my mouth. That's actual fact. Nick, Man Space is saying great analog from Nick talking about aviation in the 1920s in today's space program. Those were true pioneers, just like we are today.
Yeah.
And then you see this gigantic starship that will take us to the next level. Like a DC-10 is actually how
Get me
SpaceX
started
is
on
looking
that
at.
Starship. Was that breathtaking or what?
Man, I'm
Man,
telling you.
I'm still, my
Yeah.
palms are still sweating.
Those I've watched it 30
remarkable.
times.
Yeah.
And those chopsticks, the tower was communicating with
Mm-hmm.
that stage. So if it was coming in hot, he would compensate a little bit. The technology, and
Yeah.
it landed on pegs.
Mm-hmm.
And Musk says the next one's going to be a 1 centimeter accuracy
I believe it.
on
I
there,
believe it.
and I believe it too. The radar, the V, what would that be in aviation term? You're a pilot. The VFR,
Let's
Is
see.
that-
What's the
whatever the
VHF?
VHF signals coming are just unbelievable on there. Well, we're going to digress a little bit there, but there's some more food for your palate. Not my palate, or maybe Cliff Watson's palate out there, because Cliff just joined us from the Gold Coast of Eastern Australia, waking up to his
Very
brekkie.
good. Well done. These are some items from the Apollo program. This is where we saw the advent of what we call the spoon bowl. Now, it was a big deal back in those days, but basically the technology is exactly the same that you see on Ziploc bags. You could open it, you could eat it, you could reseal it, and come back and eat it again.
Mm-hmm.
These are individual food items here, but on the upper left side, that is a complete meal in one fist-sized package. That's how tightly these things were packed.
The top brownish one.
Yeah, uh-huh.
John, you might, if you can move that a little bit to the screen left there. But I'm saying you can move that slide over a little bit, and we see what's behind Nick. But if you can't, that's fine too.
But all these food items were in lockers down in the lower equipment bay, just to the left of the nav station, and they were all tightly packed in this compartment. You got your meals out. They were color coded. For the Apollo guys, the colors were red, white, and blue, naturally.
Okay.
And you had meals A, B, and C.
What was the commander's color?
The commander was red.
Okay.
Yeah.
Pilot blue. And...
Pilot was the
Thank you, sir. That's
the
good.
CMP was white and the LMP was blue.
And we'll tell you. Well, I'll just mention that since you're talking to the Apollo guys. Been around Harrison Jack Schmidt a few times, and I heard him comment that if you're looking at food that was flown in space, there's a good reason why we didn't eat it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It was lousy. Okay.
Well, we talked to the astronauts about the selection process, selecting your food, and invariably during the selection process, the dietitians will look at what you've selected and they'll say, well, you need some more vegetables here, take some broccoli. And you say, okay, I'll take the broccoli. So the broccoli goes up and the broccoli comes back down.
There you
And
go.
we have had packs of broccoli that have made more flights than some astronauts.
Oh, is that right? Now, how pioneering was the packaging here? Some of us at home might have on their kitchen counter a vacuum sealed thing, and that's a great thing when
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
buy a good poultry or meat and want to break it up. This was kind of pioneering back then,
Yeah,
wasn't
and it was also the advent of the rehydratable foods, the freeze dried foods, and the foods you see here, particularly on the bottom left and bottom right, you'll see those appendages with a black ring around
it?
them,
Uh-huh.
and that's where you inserted the nozzle of the water gun, squirted your water in there, and then you mushed up the food, kneaded the food, and let it set until it mixed properly, and then you ate it. And Apollo, the astronauts will tell you, Apollo was the first time we had hot water in space.
Okay.
So you could finally have hot coffee
Good.
and hot meals and such. So yeah, that was a big improvement
Yeah,
too.
eating cold food all the time, that would get definitely
Yeah, that would
old.
definitely get old. These are some of the food packages that were saved from Apollo 11. These are at the Smithsonian.
Ooh.
Now, if you look, these are all rehydratables, of course. And if you look at the top, you'll see a little yellow circle up on the top. And what that is a biocide tablet. And what you did was when you finished spooning your food out of there, you broke that biocide capsule up, and it would kill any bacteria and henceforth kill any odors. And all that trash, again, there was a trash locker down the lower equipment bay, I think on the right side of the nav station, where all of your wet trash went into, including, Lord help us, the solid waste. So,
Yeah.
and that's
Right.
another story.
They had a pill for that too
Yeah.
to put
Yeah.
in there. Nick, on the 6-7 day Apollo 11 journey and the other longer missions, how many extra days of food were they able to take with them? Do you ever hear that as
I
an
know.
emergency?
I know. In shuttle, we have it's usually mission time plus 3 days.
Okay.
So I'm sure that they would have an emergency ration in case they were delayed coming back home for any period of time, and also rations of food for survival if they were stranded at sea for some reason or another. If they landed in the wrong place and they had to live in the life raft for a day or two, I'm sure they had that contingency covered as well. Another Apollo 11 food item. This is one of the spoon bowls, and you can see the seam up on the top where we separate that seam, spoon out your food, and then close it again. And again, on the bottom, the nozzle or the aperture for the water gun.
Did they have a spork instead of a spoon, I wonder?
They had a regular
fork and a
spoon.
spoon?
They had a
Okay.
regular spoon. I don't think they used forks, and there was no way you could use a knife up there because how are you going to cut food against a table and so forth?
Right.
Now on shuttle, the preferred utensil was the long teaspoon. That way you could dig down into that MRE pouch and get every last bit from the bottom of the pouch. So that was a favorite. And again, another example of a spoon bowl food from Apollo 11.
Are these out of your personal collection or out there, or just some pictures?
No,
you found?
these items are at the Smithsonian
Okay.
in Washington D.C.
Now that looks like
This is
a
Skylab,
drive-in
right?
girl on roller skates would bring you that.
This is the food station in Skylab. There are 3 of these in the Skylab station. Now you'll see the 3 circles on the bottom. Those had heating elements, so you put the hot food in there, and you had the 3 switches for the elements down the center. The upper 3, the next 3 nooks are for just thermostabilized or room temperature food. And the 2 drink containers you see up top, they're the expandable accordion containers. Now, it made a lot of sense because when you just had the powder in there, that accordion package was probably about that big. It saved space and it saved weight. And then, of course, you would inject the water and mix up the juice, and you would squeeze the tube to squeeze the juice into your mouth. Unfortunately, Bill Pogue told me that design was quite flawed because when you squeeze that juice or that drink into your mouth, you also ingest a lot of air bubbles. And air bubbles, gas in space, is sometimes not a very pleasant sensation. It can be somewhat irritating.
High flatulence level.
Yeah, there's that, but there's
Put it
also
mildly.
stomach irritation that comes with that. So Bill had some words about that design when he got back.
I believe it's Ed Gibson's birthday tomorrow.
Oh, outstanding,
Yeah,
Ed.
I'll confirm that with
Yeah,
you here, but I
very
think he's
good.
going to be 88.
Man.
And I've been looking for that third novel that he wrote.
I got to tell you about Ed Gibson. He was an example of one of the scientists who came into the program, and he took to flying like a duck to water. He had a great time during UPT, undergraduate pilot training, learned to fly the T-38, and he greatly enjoyed it.
Huh. Yeah, he's been a personal friend of our godfather Charlie Mars at the museum for a while. We've tried to get him on here, and it's okay. Things happen when they do, and they've certainly been interviewed a lot. But you ever talk to one of our favorites, or I'm sure he's one of yours, but one of mine, Jack Lousum, about the food?
Oh yeah, Jack and I talked about the food, and Jack indicated that much of the food on STS-3, much of it was left over from Skylab, and you still
Oh,
had those
really?
you still had those accordion containers,
Oh my gosh.
and a lot of it came over from Skylab, and we talked about that, and he says like it was like soldiers in Vietnam would check their C rations and saw they were dated from the Korean War.
Oh my God. Well, that's some.
But thermostabilizers are designed to last that long.
Yeah, yeah. There's another.
This is another view of the Skylab food container with some of the Apollo era food sitting at the base. We're still using using up the supply of Apollo food that we had for Skylab.
Now, did you say that was heated? Part of that?
Yeah,
Some of those sections were
the
heated.
3 holes you see in the front, those had heating elements in them, and that's where the hot food went. The other 3 just above them, those were for stored foods, thermal stabilized food, and then you had a couple of compartments for either condiments or for your drink container. But you see on the front of that panel, there are 3 switches that control the heating
Yeah,
elements. there on the
okay. Of course, a
bottom
lot
row.
of room on Skylab. They could do all kinds of things
Yeah.
that we couldn't in other spacecraft situations there.
Yes. This is an overview of I won't call it typical shuttle menu, but what you might find on a shuttle flight. In the black pouch there, you've got beefsteak, which again is thermostabilized. Now, in the old days, the term was irradiated because that's what you did. You irradiated that food, you killed the bacteria, and that's why it was able to be stored for so long. But irradiated, I guess, sounded too scary for some people, so we went to thermostabilized.
Thermal stabilized. Okay.
Just above-
It's a radiator. Right?
Just above that to the left, you can see some of the chocolate-coated peanuts or candy-coated chocolates.
Yep.
Above that, a package of cookies, and you could find either Lorna Doones or Chessman cookies on the shuttle menu. Just above that in the brown pouch, I think might have been some cheese spread. To the right, the green there is cream spinach, which is a favorite of mine. But it underscores the fact that vegetables, rehydrating vegetables up there is it can be kind of dicey because you don't want them too crisp and you don't want them too soggy. And Roger Crouch told me that it was a real art just getting the right amount of moisture into those vegetables so they turned out right. Unfortunately, most of the vegetables he ended up with turned out to be on the soggy side. But cream spinach is one of those foods that it's got to be just right. I mean, there's a difference between cream spinach at, say, Perkins and cream spinach at the Colony Hotel in Palm Beach. So it's one of those things, one of those foods you have to get just absolutely right. Just below the cream spinach to the left is a pack of crackers. And then on the cutlery side there, you see the knife, the knife and the fork, neither which of you really used up there. It's mostly, like I say, it was that long spoon. But the most important utensil you had up there was a pair of scissors. And you see those scissors there with you. Everybody had a set of scissors, and you took care of your scissors the way they took care of their spoons in Cool Hand Luke. You lose your spoon, you're in trouble. You lose your scissors, you're in trouble. And one of the tricks that they tell you about is that when you cut open a food package, don't cut that top all the way off. Cut it until you get to the end and it's still attached, because that way you've got just one piece of garbage instead of 2 pieces of garbage you have to deal with
that
later
smaller
on.
piece could float around
Absolutely,
easily.
yeah, and didn't get clogged up in the wrong places. So
That's a little metal thing that puts stuff underneath at the top there.
Yeah, that's the springs that we have up there on the top, magnets for the cutlery, and that food tray could be strapped to your leg.
Wow,
Yeah.
interesting. As you mentioned Roger Crouch, I was looking over here to see if he's coming this cycle because I really liked him and
Yeah.
his wife. There, can't
Roger
wait
and
to
Ann,
see him
wonderful
again.
people, great
Yeah, we'll
folks.
take him out to dinner for
There
sure
you
when
go.
they come back next time.
Absolutely. Now this is one of everybody's favorites up there, and that is the shrimp cocktail. Now I put this in there to show the different packaging that we've used over the years. The rigid package on the right was used in the early portion, the majority of the shuttle program. But when it came time to fly up to higher inclinations, like 51.6 degrees, you had to save weight anywhere and everywhere. One of my friends who worked in crew equipment, I said, "How strict are you with this weight savings thing?" He says, "Hey," he says, "I'm counting t-shirts." So one of the things he did was he came up with this lighter weight package for the freeze-dried food like the shrimp cocktail that you see on the left. And that's the current design for these packages that we have on board the International Space Station. Now the shrimp cocktail is a favorite because that sauce, that hot sauce that's in it, it really does open up the sinuses because with fluid distribution, you tend to get a clogged head that clogs your ability to taste your food. So most folks would have a little shrimp cocktail for an entree, open up their sinuses, and then dig into their main course. But the thing about the shrimp cocktail, again, you had to be very careful to knead it and to get it mixed up real well. Now, if you let a piece of that cocktail sauce escape the moisture, and you had this little pellet of cocktail sauce, if you ingested that, it would dry clean your sinuses. So you made sure that that shrimp cocktail was thoroughly mixed before you ate it. And John McBride said that he took his shrimp cocktail, and after he mixed it up, he put it up near the air conditioning vent to give it a little chill before he ate it.
Oh, right, okay. Like he maybe headed Bernard Surf or something
Yeah,
down the road.
sure.
We've got such great viewers here, Nick, as you know, and they're so intelligent. Dean Babcock's got a good question here. Where was the food prepared?
The food was prepared on the middeck.
No.
I'm sorry.
Here on Earth.
Oh, in
Who,
Houston, Johnson Space Center in
okay, he
Houston.
suspected Johnson
Our
Space
chief
Center.
dietitian for many years was Vicki Colares, and Vicki has written a book which I've yet to read about food in space, but I intend to be reading that soon. And uh, she oversaw the operations of the kitchen, the food tasting that they had for the astronaut crews. They came in. We'll show that later on. But one of the things that happened in the food lab was when we started using MREs. We got the MREs straight from the military. Now the problem with those were they were heavily salted and they had like 2,500, 3,000 calories, something like that, because they were designed for soldiers who were carrying 50-pound rucksacks in the desert.
Yeah.
So then Johnson Space Center got into the business of making their own MREs for the shuttle crews. They reduced the salt, they reduced the the calorie count, and they fared a lot better. And they were able to broaden out to a wide selection, a wide variety of foods up there.
Very good. Good question there, Dean Babcock. That's what he suspected. Here's what you were talking about here.
Yes, a food tasting at the lab. There's Karen Nyberg over on the left.
Ron Guerin.
Yeah, Ronnie Guerin and Mike Fossum. But this is a typical food tasting, and you don't get the whole meal. You basically sample each item. You can see the samples of the fruit juices in front of them as well, and then you grade them. Now this was done. I think this is STS 117, but today in the food lab you have a tablet and you grade your food digitally, which is pretty interesting. But this is where sometimes some commanders will lay down some rules. For instance, Brian Duffy, when he was commander of STS 72, he told his crew at the table, he said, "Now there's the two things that are verboten on this flight, and that is fish, tuna fish, and sardines." He said, "There ain't gonna be no fish up there." He says, "Because that smell travels, and you don't know how provocative it's going to be to someone, even into flight day 3 and flight day 4." So he said, "I'm going to be the fish police. No fish on this flight."
All right. Big old foghorn going on. Someone's got fish somewhere there. Karen Nyberg on the left there, you might recognize in this commercial for a bank that is airing right now. Saw it today. Derek Jeter, and they don't even say who she is on the stage there. The Capital One guy is taking all these questions at a press conference, and they're ignoring the Hall of Fame great of the Yankees. I know Marty's going, all right, my Derek Jeter there. And of course, Karen Nyberg, who's turned her photography from space into cloth and so forth,
Yeah.
right? And she does all kinds of things, quilting and so
Quilts.
forth. And I saw this a couple of times. You said you haven't seen this commercial, so you'll probably see it once we get these political ads off the TV there. But she's standing there, and he's saying, she goes like, "You're in the Hall of Fame, right?" And she goes, "Yeah, you've been to space, haven't you?" "Yeah, no one wants to ask us questions." So
Well, it's probably on YouTube, and I'll catch it on YouTube.
yeah, there she is there in there. So hope she comes back. She did a special event promoting, what she does with the quilts and all that
Yeah.
sort of stuff on there.
That's great.
Well, there's Sonny, and
Yeah, again, this is in
Who's
there's
the- I
Mike
don't rec-
Hopkins.
okay,
That's Mike Hopkins, and again, that's in Node 1. And I think he's got himself a little Thanksgiving spread there with the turkey and the stuffing and potatoes au gratin, I believe.
oh, it's like. Sonny's on our green screen. It's like
Yeah,
they're
it's
together.
almost,
there. This
almost
kinda-
looks like they're
yeah,
together.
it does. It does.
They're in
there,
the same
yeah,
place
yeah.
and same relative size. But yeah, that's Mike Hopkins at the at Node 1, the food station in Node 1.
And we'll be celebrating holidays in space, of course, as we're rolling into
Yeah.
that. I'm sure Butch Wilmer didn't think he was going to be spending Thanksgiving orbiting the Earth.
Well, my
But-
understanding is that before Butch left, they had a storm come through Houston that damaged his roof. And his thinking process, well, is I'll be back in 8 days. I can take care of it then. Well, he's up there for 8 months now.
Yeah.
So I expect the astronaut support person for Butch and Sonny are there helping with that problem. But I don't think it would be too out of line for Boeing to spring for a new roof for Butch. I think that would
Now, wait a minute. You said something, the astronaut's porch person?
support person.
Support
yeah,
person.
yeah,
Tell us
right.
a little about that.
Well, every crew every crew member can select a fellow astronaut to be their support person to take care of the family in instances such as getting them to the launch and running errands for them and things like that. And unfortunately, to double as a CAO, a casualty assistance officer, in the event that something bad happens.
Right.
So every crew has that. Every crew member selects somebody, usually someone from their own astronaut class, to serve as a CAO for the family.
Very good. Very good. Well, we're enjoying all this here. Here's another big feast up in
Let's
space.
see, this might be over in the... Yeah, this is over in the Mir space station. I see, is that Bonnie
I
over
see
there?
Baker. Is that yeah? Who
Yeah,
are
should've
those?
looked a
That's
little
not
closer.
Ochoa.
No, I should have looked a little
It's
closer.
Eileen Baker,
close.
isn't it?
I should. Is there a heading on that under that blue tab on the
STS
bottom?
110. 110.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
good show. Good.
Orbital
110.
crew eating on board.
If I
Okay, yeah.
fetch the scroll,
So
we
this
could
is
get
in
a
the-
little idea here with my shuttle scroll. 110 was Bloomfield, Frick, Ross, Steve Smith,
Okay, Jerry's
Ochoa,
up there,
Ellen
yeah.
Ochoa, Morin, and Wilhelm.
Yep.
And this is 2002.
Now, I've spoken to some of the astronauts about their experience with the Russian food, and I think the agreed-upon favorite from the Russian menu is the lamb. So
Ah.
the lamb is very good. The one that everybody pretty much turned down was brim in aspic, and that's very salty and just not very pleasant. And the Russians are still using cans. With the peel, you peel the top off. And again, you're told by the folks in the food lab, when you're taking the top off one of those cans, don't take it all the way off. It's best to leave the last part there. You got one piece of garbage instead of two when you have to deal with.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
There's Sonny in our
There.
spread there.
Yep.
There's a couple cans there, like you see,
Yeah.
open up
Yeah,
there.
there's a mixed menu there. And I think currently on the American side, we have something on the order of 250 menu items. You don't do
Here's some of them.
you don't do food selections per day per astronaut anymore. That just you can't do that over 6 months.
Right.
But what they operate from on board the space station is a pantry system. that's replenished with each of the resupply ships, the Progress, and so forth. This is this is Bruce Melnick's favorite, broccoli au gratin, and which is say it is not his favorite.
That's you're being facetious, right?
He didn't
Yeah.
care for broccoli au gratin
gratin.
at all. The next thing we have is chicken and noodles, and then
Alright.
following that up with a standard, a favorite that all the kids want to try, which is the mac and cheese. Next we have scrambled eggs, again in that rigid
That's
container.
mac and cheese.
That's mac and cheese. Looks like a lot of fun, doesn't it?
Looks like tofu.
Yeah, but again, these are in the rigidized containers that we use in the early part of the shuttle program. These are scrambled eggs, and one of the favorite scrambled eggs on the menu is Mexican scrambled eggs that has pepper in them. Again, opening up those sinuses and giving you a little much-needed zing in your for your taste buds. Oh, let's see. Next is pasta and shrimp, and again, this is in one of the newer packages. You can see the rehydration spout in the top. Now, this package would be placed into the rehydration station. A needle would puncture that spout on the top, and you dial up how much water you wanted to add to it, how much, and whether it's cold water or hot water. And then you push the button, and that would start the cycle of the water to go in there for, say, 4 to 6 ounces, 8 ounces, or whatever. And then the limit switch would stop the flow of water. Now, on one flight, as I was told, one of the crew members had, what was that soup? Prima mushroom soup, and it was in one of those silver pouches that we have for the drinks. Had a powder inside, so you add it hook it up to the rehydration station, dial up 8 ounces, push the hot water button, and then go do something while your pouch is filling, fully expecting that the limit switch will stop the flow of water. Well, in this case, it didn't. And when the astronaut turned around to the rehydration station, he saw this big silver ball growing on the end of the rehydration station. And before he could say, "Oh, shucks," it blew. And there was cream of mushroom soup all over the middeck. It took them 45 minutes to clean it up, and they never got rid of the smell because of all the soup that had seeped in between the middeck lockers.
He's withholding that astronaut's name for a good reason, because that
well,
commander
I will-
probably wasn't.
I will withhold the astronaut's name, but I will tell you the story came from Wendy Lawrence.
Okay, all right. Good old Wendy.
Yeah.
She's awesome. Have you eaten any of this food?
I've had some of it, and it's, again, with the thermostabilized MRE types.
Which is this image right here?
Yeah, and these are what are called. I love the name. The product name for these are flex cans, because they're kind of like
right.
aluminized material. But the MREs are really quite good, and they have a wide selection of them, and you can have them either hot or ambient temperature. And as I say, they last for months and months and months, having been irradiated. So those foods are quite good. Yeah. Now these are some of the drinks, the powdered drinks, and again, these silver flex cans. You'd have your powdered drinks in there. You'd also have things like soup in these pouches. Now, if you look closely at the straws that are arrayed at the bottom of those pouches, the straws have a clamp, and the straws are made of rubberized plastic. So you put the straw in there and you sip your drink, and then when you close the clamp, you sip the last part of the drink out there so it doesn't migrate out of the straw. Because if you left this open and just let your bag sit there, surface tension would cause that drink to float up the length of the straw, and you get this growing bubble of fruit juice on the end of your straw. So that's why the clamps are there.
Very interesting there. And I
These
believe
are some
that's
of the
our final.
These are some of the
slide.
condiments. The one that everybody asked about is up on the top right, and those are the 2 plastic vials of liquid salt and liquid pepper.
Oh, liquid.
Now the salt, of course, is in a water solution. The pepper is in a solution similar to cooking oil. So basically, you just squirt that into your food and mix it in, and you've got your salt and pepper. For the rest, you can see the condiments such as mayonnaise and tomato or ketchup are in the classic containers you might find in a restaurant or camping store or whatever. And then we've got, again, candy-coated chocolates. We've got the chessman cookies, and I think a couple of crackers there. So these are just some of the incidentals, some of the noshing food you might find in the pantry. Now, during the shuttle program, astronauts could have quite a bit of say in what they took up there with them. Fred Gregory and Sonny Carter went to a barbecue restaurant in Warner Robins, Georgia, and they loved the beef brisket there. So they asked the food lab if they could take it up there. They said, yeah, bring us a sample and we'll check it out and see if it's okay. And they ended up taking it up there. Ken Cameron's wife won the chili cook-off in Houston one year. And Ken thought, well, yeah, it'd be kind of neat if I could take some of the wife's chili up there. So he contacted the food lab, and the food lab said, well, bring us a sample, say 5 gallons, and we'll check it out and we'll see if it's okay. And they checked it out, and
They
was
were
okay.
eating it. They wanted to
And
eat
it.
it.
I think some of that went around the
Yeah.
lab. But yeah, they ended up taking that up there with them. Another item that Ken took up, and it was on a docking mission with the Mir space station. Ken talked about the importance of team building, especially internationally. And what you tried to do is find out what the other guys like, try to provide that for them. Well, one of the things Ken noticed when he was in Russia, when he was in Moscow, is he would see Russians queued up to an ice cream kiosk during a snowstorm. Those folks love their ice cream. So he thought it'd be a good idea if he could get ice cream up there, but he didn't know how he was going to accomplish it. Well, eventually it turned out that the crew was going to take up a new freezer for medical samples up to the Mir space station. They take it up empty, and then the cosmonauts would use it up on orbit and then return it later on. Well, Ken had an idea, and he told the engineers that, when you've got a freezer, the wear and tear on the freezer is what? The thermostat, cycling on and off, on and off. He says if you pack that freezer with what he called thermal mass capacitance, a name that he completely made up. If you fill that up with thermal mass capacitance, it would keep that thermostat from cycling back and forth. And he said, I think a good idea for thermal mass capacitance would be chocolate chip or strawberry. So, of course, they packed that freezer with Bluebell ice cream and took it up there. They didn't tell the Russians about it. And he told everybody, let's keep this secret, because if something happens, we can't bring it up and they know about it, they'll just be disappointed. He said, so let's keep it as a surprise. So the first evening they had a dining in over on the Russian side, and later on they'd have a dining in on the shuttle side. But for that, they brought over the food, and as a surprise, when the meal was over, they brought out the ice cream. And Ken said when those Russians saw that ice cream, they would have given the Americans anything on that space station.
Wow, that's a good
So
story.
again, that's another indication of the importance of food up on orbit, not only for nutrition, but for morale, for team building, and just as a good exercise in diplomacy, shall we say.
Ken Cameron will be out there with Nick Thomas and at the Astronaut Encounter November 15th through 19th.
And also in that previous spot that was for Mark Lee.
Yeah, for Mark Lee there,
mhm,
is looking
yeah.
up there right
Right.
before Charlie Walker comes there.
Yeah.
And so, well, I have thoroughly enjoyed the company of Mr. Nick Thomas, and we'll update your years out there at the complex to 38, but that just shows you he's been doing this for us for over 2 years, and we certainly appreciate that a lot. I wanted to say thank you, Steve Jokums, Dave Stengy, Robert Law, Doug Forrest. Why don't you give a few after to
Gary Gerald,
mhm.
John Borelli, let's see, Manspace, Thomas Clement,
Celentano.
Celentano, I'm
Yeah.
sorry. Dean Babcock and William Whiting. Hello, Bill. Let's see, Tom Usiak, Tommy, Cynthia Rossi, CB, Carlton Bailey. Good to have you out there, Carlton. And Cliff Watson. So thank you all for joining us today. Just as a quick note, whether you're Republican, Democrat, or Independent, get out there tomorrow. If you haven't done it already, get out there and vote. I will remember personally during the Civil War in El Salvador seeing on the TV news images of people running through backyards, jumping over fences to avoid gunfire to go vote.
My
And if they could
gosh.
do that, I think we can withstand a little bit of rain or a little inclement weather.
Or a long
So,
line that I'm going to endure because I didn't get early there, but I'll be out there early and voting
so
myself.
whatever your disposition, get out there and vote.
One of my comments that I've heard astronauts talk about the food, and you're going to remember this, of
Hmm.
course, is Don Thomas.
Oh yeah.
Don Thomas was asked recently when he was last out there about the food, and he said it was terrible. I don't like it. And he actually went so far as to say, if there was a restaurant that sold astronaut food only, I would never eat
No.
there.
And there was also, it can
You heard him
be
say that,
it
right?
can be a very tricky situation in that on one instance, we did have an astronaut who was assigned to a 6-month space station increment. And during his training, he came up with a medical situation that took him off the crew, and he was replaced by another astronaut. Now, unfortunately, the first astronaut who was taken off the crew, he was a coffee drinker, and all of his supplies were already up there on station. His
Ah.
replacement was a tea drinker. So when he got up there, he was stuck with all that coffee. I don't know if he drank any of it or not, but I know he was desperately awaiting the next
Huh.
Progress resupply vehicle.
Well, and that's a good thing. 4 or 5 times a year, we have these supply ships up there. That's why we
Hmm.
knew that Sonny and Butch would have plenty of
Yeah.
food. They sent one up there right away, and I think that's so cool that they were part of the moving the Crew 9 Dragon from
Hmm.
one port to the other because we got a cargo ship going up if not today, tomorrow. But they got to test out the SpaceX spacesuits
Uh-huh.
and get a little ride around in their ride home.
And another important thing about those resupply ships is we front load them. The first thing the astronauts see when they open up the hatch are oranges, apples, fruits,
Yeah.
things that are quickly perishable. So
Hmm.
that's a big part of the celebration when a resupply ship comes up. Plus a good supply of care packages from home, which will include chocolate and cake and things like that.
Absolutely. So, and probably a lot of uh, uh, hot sauce packs from Taco Bell. Eileen Collins told me she packed one of her
Did she?
her pockets full of hot sauce because you lose your sense of
Yeah,
taste.
yeah.
Everyone says up there.
Yeah, I sometimes tell the story. I said we've heard stories of astronauts putting Tabasco sauce on their Cheerios, but I haven't been able to confirm that yet.
Oh wow! All
But
right.
that's just a play to talk about the need for spice on the foods and how your taste buds can be affected up there. And
What?
some astronauts will get up there, and things that tasted good on the ground don't taste good up in orbit. One of my friends was a big coffee lover and did not enjoy the coffee up on orbit. And she said that was because you couldn't enjoy coffee when you're sipping it through a straw. A lot of the enjoyment that we take in things like
Mhm.
coffee
Yeah.
and tea and wine, what have you, is the aroma as we bring the cup to our mouth. And you don't have that when you're up in space. And smell is a big part of our enjoyment of coffee. And she just couldn't enjoy it that way.
Well, enjoyed this conversation with Nick as usual, and everybody else has. Robert Law says it was a fascinating show today. Steve Jokums, who you met during Shuttle Fest last year,
Okay.
he says that your shows are always exceptional, and that's why we're
Thank
always glad to have him in the queue here. And we'll figure out something for him to do in December, whatever he wants. And but you got a question from Dean Babcock,
you.
not
Okay.
food related, but what types of medications are kept on the space station, Nick?
It's a generalized first aid kit, if you will. There are medicines for everything from you've got Neosporin for cuts, and you've got uh,
Aspirin, things.
aspirin, things of that nature. And as you go up the chain of problems, you have more important medications. One of the most important ones up there that is used for anti-nausea is the drug. It was first used, I believe, for nausea for cancer patients. And again, the name just kind of slipped out of my mind there. But it's an injectable, and you inject it in the flank. So Bob Springer told me the story. He had to inject one of the other astronauts with this, and of course, zero G is not a stable platform. So the guy moved after he injected it, and it turned the needle to the point where he tore the skin slightly, and the guy started to bleed. And Bob said he had the pleasure of seeing this unusual ruby red ball growing off this guy's hip. And the guy said, "You want to get me a Band-Aid and clear this up and get your mind off that red bubble and get me patched
The
up here?"
science of it, he
Yeah, yeah,
was
that just
looking
the
at.
science of it is always fascinating.
Huh.
Yeah.
Well, exceptional show today, my friend. I
Thank you very much.
appreciate that.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Nick always wants to prepare a great show, and these are the type of programs that you get nowhere else on the internet. Let's face it, YouTube's full of all kinds of places, but we pride ourselves in having space workers and VIPs and people like Nick Thomas on here to tell the real story. So, thank you, John Graham, for doing an excellent job on our Streamlabs here today. He's going to take. You're going to start seeing some changes and some things that we've thought about for a long time being executed on here. And thank you, Marty Winkle, for being in the background up there in Calverton, Long Island. And Marty has the question of the day, which was what show premiered on October 4th, 1957, when everyone was flipping out about the Sputnik going over America with a little beep, beep, beep tape recorder playing. What was the hit show that premiered that night? And the answer is Leave It to Beaver. Many of you guessed that. Certainly Steve Jokums did, Gary Gerald, and Manned Space, which is Mitch Rothman, did there. So thank you, buddy, for another great space trivia today question from our lunar module lead engineer and launch process service computer guy. Spent almost 40 years.
And one of our main engine guys, too.
That's right. Yep. In there. So glad that you're up there doing what you're doing, but we all miss you here at the American Space Museum. And I think a few astronauts will miss him.
Oh, yeah.
Because he's always up there with stuff to autograph and so forth. So we'll
right
let you know.
The line.
That's right. We'll let you know what's going on there. So thanks again for everybody and all your well wishes. I feel great every day, getting more accustomed to some unclogged stents, and I think they even threw a new one in there that is making me feel good. So, for over 20 years, the American Space Museum has been preserving the birth of the space age here. The 10th anniversary of the shuttle monument being placed out there was November 1st. And we let it slip through the cracks a little bit. We'll be talking about that on future shows of how our Spaceview Park is to us like a Taj Mahal, an Eiffel Tower, a Roman Colosseum, the only place in the world you can put your hands on top of Gene Cernan's or Wally Schirra's and go out and see Deke Slayton. What's unusual about his handprints? Maybe that'll be one of Marty's questions one day. So thank you, Nick, and thank you all for watching. Until tomorrow, I'm Mark Marquette saying we can't wait to see you in our museum to bridge the space between us.